Hi there. There is a looming deadline in Ontario for short-term rentals, and if you don't comply and get your application in on time, you could be fined up to $60,000. Today, we're going to break down the new short-term rental regulation. We are going to talk about which areas of cottage country are impacted by it. We're going to talk about what exactly the bylaw compels you to do and how it works. We're going to talk about how this impacts renters and also owners, and we're going to talk about how you can future-proof your investment in real estate. Hi there, my name is Marcy Verberg, and today we're talking about impacts in cottage country of short-term rentals. All right, let's get right into it. So, why did the government implement the new short-term rental regulation policy? Well, there's kind of two reasons. One is what they're calling behavior, and the other one is environmental. What does that really mean more specifically? Okay, what it means is a lot of people have been complaining about partiers through Airbnb. And through all these complaints, the government has been dealing with it, the municipality has been dealing with it, and so now they want to kind of clamp down on what's happening. The second part to this is environmental, which really refers to the number of toilet capacity you have in your cottage. So some cottages, just don't have, they mostly have kind of, sanitary systems that don't allow a lot of people to use the sanitary system. Therefore, we can't have that many people. We need to limit the number of people that are using the toilets in the house. So, what kind of behavior issues are we talking about? Well, we're talking about really big parties. I can tell you about a couple of situations that I know about personally. One is a very large cottage. It actually holds about 20 people. They actually rented a whole bunch of times, and this was actually through a property management company. They had a really crazy group of people that came in, did $25,000 worth of damage to their property, did all kinds of crazy stuff. There was walls damaged, floors damaged, a pool table was damaged, all that kind of thing. So that is kind of an extreme example. There's also kind of the, unneighborly conduct that a lot of these Airbnb people have. I've actually seen people standing on somebody's dock next door throwing rocks at their family. So obviously we need to clamp down on those types of things. Now, let's talk about the new bylaws and what they mean. Now, the bylaw is specific to your municipality. So, Muskoka Lakes, Parry Sound, Kawarthas, everybody has a little bit of a different play on their short-term rental regulations, so STR regulations in their area. So, you have to check where you are. Okay, so most of them have a new license, and you have to get your license, especially in Muskoka, by December 31st of 2025. So this year, you have to get your license done. And then it applies starting in May of next year, but you only have until December this year to get your application in. And the application, I mean, part of it's pretty basic. They have some portals set up, and I'm going to link those below for you. However, you need floor plans, and a lot of us do not have floor plans for cottages. So if you need somebody to draw those up for you, you've got to get them done. They've got to show the fire exits, they've got to show the toilets, they've got to show the bedrooms, because what they're really looking for is to see how many people you're going to have. And now you are allowed in general 2 people per bedroom, excluding infants. And then depending what area you're in. So if you're in Muskoka, it's 2 people per bedroom total. Kawarthas allows you 2 people per bedroom plus 2 more extra people. So keep in mind that you do need to do the floor plans. You have to fill out the application. Now there's also a really high cost to these things. So in the Muskoka area, the cost is $1,000 per application. In Kawarthas, it ranges between 300 to 1,500. Kawarthas has kind of broken it down to say, if you live in the house and it's kind of hosted, we're going to do it for $300. But if you're going to not live there, it's going to be $1,500. And just going back to Muskoka Lakes area, if you're not on the water, it's $500 application fee. But if you're on the water, it's $1,000 application fee. Now, some of areas, such as Parry Sound, actually does not actually have any STRs in place right now. However, you have to be a bit careful because outside of Parry Sound, kind of in the outside the district where you've got McKellar, McDougall, like those types of areas, those areas have actually had like a no rental bylaw for years and years and years on the books, and it's up to a $25,000 fine. So you have to check your lake specifically and your actual break it down to your municipality. Okay, so what can happen and where do these regulations actually work? Now, if you're in Muskoka, they have a couple of things very specific. So in Muskoka, they have two rules. They have a summer break rule and they have a summer frequency rule. Now, the break rules are pretty easy to understand. Basically, you have to take 1 week off each month during June, July, and August, meaning you can rent 3 weeks of those months, but you have to have one 7 day period where there's no rentals. Not really sure why they put that in there, but I guess it's just to lower the amount of people coming to cottage country. Then they have the summer frequency rule, which means you can only have one group of people for every 6 nights. Now, if say you're only renting on the weekends, so you rent Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you still can't turn it over on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday to another group of people. You actually, in that 6 day period, you can only have one group. So if you rent Friday, Saturday, Sunday, then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday need to be empty. So keep that in mind. And I'm really concerned that people are going to get messed up on that rule because it's a little bit harder to understand. Now, the fines for that are between $2,000 and $12,000. So they're pretty hefty fines if you don't comply. If you actually rent and you don't have any license in place, they can fine you up to 60,000, that's 60,000 dollars for not having a license in place. So they're going to be pretty strict on these policies in some of the areas. You also have to have a $2 million liability insurance policy. And you have to make sure that your water is working. So a lot of cottages run off well water, that kind of thing. So there are some compliance rules around, drinking water that you're going to have to take into account when you're doing your application. So how do you actually apply? Well, you go to your municipality's website. They actually have a portal set up where you can actually click application and you can fill out your application. So remember to make sure you do that if you're in Muskoka before December 31st this year, because it's new. If you're in Kawarthas, they've had this for a while, so the application's on the website. If you're in Parry Sound, check where exactly you are because a lot of Parry Sound you don't need one. But so, what is the implication of this? Well, northern towns really need to have cottage visitors, and that's because the economies rely on them. Local economies swell from about 5 or 6 thousand people all the way to 100,000 people in the summer. The jobs in the community are very reliant on summer cottage traffic. Even things like the grocery stores and the bigger chains, they rely really heavily. So in order to keep this economy going, I don't think we really want to cut back all of the rentals in the area. Now, what we've seen so far, implication wise, is there has been a drop in 50% of the inventory for rentals. So, this is coming from the property managers who manage people's rentals for them. So, there's been a 50% drop already in inventory available. So, they're going to potentially see less people here. Now, I think the municipalities are kind of recognizing that they need to keep the people. So, I think they're trying to play with try to put it in such a sense that people are still going to come, make it so people can still rent their cottage. Although what I think is going to happen is if you're kind of a person who does Airbnb all the time and you do it ongoing, then maybe it makes sense for you to spend $1,000 and go through all of this excess to get the application done. If you're a person who rents your cottage, 1 week a year to kind of pay your taxes or something like that, spending $1,000 in a license is probably not going to be worth it. And so for people who, a lot of people have an inherited family cottage. It's kind of expensive for them to pay the taxes. So what they do is they rent it a little bit. Those people are going to be really impacted. So a couple of things about if you're buying a cottage or if you want to make sure you're kind of future proofing your cottage. If you are renting, make sure you do those applications and make sure that you have a license. If you're buying a new cottage, keep these rules in mind and check where you're actually buying to find out whether you're allowed to rent. Now, also, you can always rent more than 28 days. These rules never apply to anything that's more than a 28-day rental. So if you're willing to rent your cottage for, 30-day periods or 60-day periods or something like that, then you can certainly do that, and that does not apply here. One other thing I wanted to mention is that with these new rules, you actually have to be within a 30 to 60-minute drive of your cottage. So that's going to mean that you're probably going to have to hire a property management company or somebody to be around and available if you want to rent your cottage on an on-term basis. Okay, so if you want to see the applications, I'm going to link them below. If you want more information, you can call me, you can call your municipality, and you can ask them about this. If you have any other questions about your cottage or cottage country properties, feel free to reach out. I'm kind of one of those hybrid people where I understand the sophistication of city buyers because I work also in the city and then I also work in cottage country. So please feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to help you.